I think in most of the games that he's played, he's had one or two chances that Mo Salah should score. And at that point, you can't say, well, Arne Slot's system's wrong, or his relationship with Isak isn't right. And I think in the act of missing those chances, that's not really on the manager. If Mo Salah's done a sky one, that's not really Arne Slot's fault.
We back! Like the Tennessee Titans, what a weekend. Late goals, Liverpool invented them. But like the long throws or Kendrick Lamar bootcut jeans, they now become a new trend, sweeping the nation. Everyone's doing them now. So Chelsea fans, savour every single second in the style of Enzo Maresca, running down that sideline like some bald Italian Forrest Gump. And it's Arsenal Football Club who are now screaming, stop the count! After a new invention for them, a routine win that felt sensational in its own right. Third place Tottenham win at the fighting pit of Leeds. First away team to win a league game there in 385 days. And no one thunders up to 10th place louder than Manchester United. Oh, Everton Football Club, also astonishing. And I'm ready to be hurt again, to break it all down. It's a joy to welcome back the Crown Prince of Harrogate, the chocolate orange aficionado, the Semenyo of sentences. I've got to say, Raw, I'm elated to see you, because seeing you means you survived Storm Amy.
Yeah, I'm conscious that by American standards, our weather feels quite small and insignificant, but it's been windy this weekend, Rog. It's been windy and rainy, and we don't like it when it's windy and rainy.
That's just the summer in Yorkshire, Raw. It has been. I mean, we watched the football, we saw the biblical deluge, and you just utterly doubled it over by venturing to the north of Wales.
I did. I made my Wrexham debut, Rog, in terms of visiting the town, not playing for the team.
Tell us how it was, Raw. What did you experience in that magical kingdom? I believe you almost bailed through the wind, through the rain. You're like, sod it. You know what? How much do I really want to risk my life to write a beautiful piece for the world?
Well, this is the thing. When you are a servant of content, Rog, you have to make sacrifices. So again, by American standards, the drive from where I live in Yorkshire to Wrexham is not long. It's like 2.5 hours. But it is quite windy, and it's over some hills. And there was a point outside Blackburn, which is near Burnley, where I thought, look, it's raining a lot, it's very windy. This isn't the most sort of urgent reason to drive to the other side of the country. So I thought, maybe I'll pull out, maybe I'll just go home and do something else.
But when you just drove past that 100-foot golden statue of JJ Watt on Burnley's outskirts, you're like, you know what, I'm going to press on.
Well, his face has been projected into the sky at all times. I don't know if you knew that. But I pressed on, bravely, Rog. I don't want to say it, but bravely. Yeah, and I got to Wrexham and I had a little walk around, went to the club shop, and there's lots of really kind of slightly awestruck, largely American tourists in Wrexham now. This happens every home game. It's a real kind of destination, which is the first time anyone has ever said that about Wrexham. But the scene that stayed with me was I went for a little walk in the wind and the rain round the stadium towards the turf. I thought I might as well go and see the famous turf.
The famous pub, Wayne.
The famous pub. And sheltering it from the rain and the wind, just kind of underneath the main stand of the stadium, was the Wrexham documentary crew and the Birmingham documentary crew, because they were playing Birmingham. This was the documentary derby, Rog. And I waited and watched. Waited and watched for a couple of minutes as I thought it might go a little bit Anchorman. I was hoping for them to sort of start using the cameras as bludgeons, or using the boom mics as swords, or like a cable as a garrote. And it didn't. It was all very very pleasant and cordial. But
what equipment are you using? Oh, that's a nice tracker cam.
Knowing cameramen, they'll have been comparing like technical details about the cameras.
Just dueling each other by throwing up drones. How high can your cam go, huh?
There were drones in the sky, Rog. There's always drones in the sky at football matches now. But it was the perfect scene as a journalist. It's the thing you kind of want, where you feel as though the heavens are smiling on you a little bit, because you drive all that way through the wind and the rain, and there kind of unfurling in front of you is your lead. Because it was such a weird moment to think that these two teams of people are effectively the Spider-Man meme. They are filming each other. They are creating content about other people creating content. And there was a meta-ness to it that I really enjoyed.
God, that's just amazing. It's like a through the looking glass moment where just like wheels within wheels. It's like the Petrushka doll of modern football. Just it's like the Truman Show encountering the Kardashian family and being like, oh God, you've got cameras on you all the time, haven't you?
Exactly, and whether any of that footage ever gets used, I don't know. But there was a moment where Tom Wagner, the chairman of Birmingham, went into the turf, and it was obviously a kind of set piece. They'd been expecting it. There were people outside the turf making sure that kind of the flow of people were right to allow them to come in. So there will be a scene in the Birmingham documentary of Tom Wagner going into the turf. And there might well be a scene in the Wrexham documentary, whatever season it's on next, season 5, I guess, of the Birmingham documentary being made as Tom Wagner goes into the turf. And I don't know how to compute that, Rog.
It's amazing. It's like when you go sometimes into a dressing room in a fancy kind of tailor's, and they can get the mirrors just right, so you see eternal you. Just you looking back at you, looking back at you, looking back at you. I mean, ultimately, that's all football is. I'm sure one documentary will be like, what a plastic team this is. Look, they've got cameras following them. We don't. It's probably like the message of both of those episodes. I'm
not in a position to criticise, because I went to Wrexham through Storm Amy, Rog, bravely, to create content about people creating content about other people creating content. So I'm part of the problem too.
Did you enjoy the Stoke Kairas route?
It's a great stadium, yeah. It's not the best weather to enjoy it, because obviously they're redeveloping one of the ends. So what you get is the wind just piling through this wind tunnel, to the extent that when they turned the sprinklers on before the game to make sure the surface was nice and slick, they just fired it at the fans. There was a whole section just beneath us where the fans were just suddenly getting drenched. But it's a brilliant atmosphere. It's one of the great stadiums in terms of kind of being evocative, if not in terms of being beautiful just yet. But yeah, I was pleased to be there. Not just because it was an interesting story, but because it did feel a bit of a hole in my CV that I'd never been to Wrexham, even without the documentary, to be honest, Rog.
Oh, God, I'm talking about beautiful stadia and beautiful atmospheres. I want to raise my first Michelob Ultra of the day to the Hill Dickinson Stadium, which is, I believe to say, a magical kingdom in which Everton proved to the world that joy is possible, even for the joyless. I heard a great story this week from my oldest friend, Jamie Glassman. Jen, I talked to my last Goodison Park derby. Third generation blue. He took his own son to the new gaff for the first time. They were sitting right in the corner by that incredibly steep, beautiful south stand, and they watched in that first half as then undefeated Crystal Palace came in and absolutely, let's be honest, battered us. It was actually sitting by a guy, one of those guys, you will have heard them at Goodison Park, but still in the Hill Dickinson, who they sit kind of too close to the pitch side mics, the ones who spend the game swearing, losing their minds. It's quite a beautiful soundtrack to any Everton game. And right before half-time, Everton down 1-0, James Tarkowski came to pick up a ball ahead of a throw-in, and he was right in front of them, and the very loud guy screamed, "Tark, sort them out, will yous? We're crap!" And Tark just looked at him and said, "Yeah, I know." And I just love that. I mean, it's like the passion, the noise, the glitz, the commercial sheen of the Premier League. All that keyboard warrioring too, which is anonymous. Just two people, a fan and the centre-back, having an honest conversation mid-game, personal connection. And ultimately, I like to think changing the game. I love Tark. I love him for his honesty. Never change. But that story, it was the essence of Goodison Park Raw. And it is, I mean, it's beautiful to know it's carried on into the Big Dick.
Do you think Tark went inside at half-time, having watched Everton get battered by Crystal Palace for 45 minutes, and said, "This guy outside says we're crap. Do you think we should try not being crap?" Second half. And do you think that was the tactical switch?
I think he was like, that guy, that loudmouth, you all know him, A6, row 1. It's like, he had a tactical observation. He said, we're crap. Yeah, let's try and not be.
It just made me think that if we were less crap, we might win this game. Maybe that's all it took.
And then they put their hands in the huddle and just went, let's crap! And broke. It's just beautiful. It's like an incredible scene from an ESPN doc.
There is 100% a merchandise line for Everton in the phrase "less crap."
Yeah. I'd say 32% less. Let's aspire to be 32% less crap in the second half, lads. It's the thin margins. Less crap! Quick note before we get to the football. We're about to head into another international break. We've just launched a new platform for Hispanic football fans. Vamos! Covering football through a CONCACAF lens in which we're delivering daily content from those incredibly passionate souls at the Give and Go. What a duo they are, who cover both the US team and the mighty Mexico with equal passion. Also, I'm going to be joined by the one and only Hurt Gomez. We'll preview the US men's upcoming games, which will be released on Thursday and Friday. Got a new episode of The Captain with our friend Tyler Adams, as well as The Juice live with Clint Dempsey at the conclusion of the US and Ecuador game on Friday night. Please God, it's a big week. Come be with us here to break it all down. Sign up for every Vamos platform. All the links are in the show notes, but let's get to the football and start at Stamford Bridge. Raw Chelsea 2. Gives me no pleasure to say this. Liverpool 1. How the turntables. I mean, before the game, Chelsea coming in, a team bedraggled, 2 losses following 2 red cards in the league. That 3-1 stomping at Brighton. You can't keep giving away presents, said Enzo Maresca. A man starting to feel a bit loose tooth in that quite unforgiving, demanding culture at Chelsea, entering with a patched up back 4. The Club World Cup victory seems honestly like it was years ago. But for Liverpool, best of times, worst of times as well, to go all Dickens on your asses. Liverpool, probably the most enigmatic team in English football right now, stumbling in after back-to-back losses, which have made their immortal mentality-monstering invincibility of those first 5 games seem more like a toupee on the bald man. Lots of existential questions coming in. Also, Alisson out with a hamstring injury for about 6 weeks. In came Mamardashvili for his Premier League debut. Isak leading the line. Ekitike dropped to the bench alongside Wirtz. I mean, Raw, you'd lost to Galatasaray midweek, and Big Verge said then, there shouldn't be panic, but improvement is needed. And this game, well, it didn't start with improvement. It was cagey until the 14th minute when Mamashvili and Van Dijk gave away a throw-in for which Chelsea fed the ball to Malo Gusto. He drew Van Dijk, let Caicedo run into so much bloody space, really a symbol of Liverpool midfield's disorganisation. And Caicedo just said, sod it. Just put his foot through the ball. He lashed it, laced it, 20-ish yards out. I mean, you could have had Mamashvili and Alisson in goal and you wouldn't have prevented that ball from going in. It was surface-to-air missile.
Yeah, but it would have helped if someone in the midfield had tackled him or if Virgil van Dijk had closed him down. What was really strange about that was that he was standing, 20, like you say, 20, 22 yards out on the edge of the Liverpool box. And there was nobody near him. And as much as the game at that stage didn't really have any shape, particularly, it was still so early, it hadn't kind of taken on its final form. It was a very Liverpool moment, not just in the last week, but the entirety of this season, that there have just been these sudden moments where whatever the system is, whatever the system's meant to be, just kind of shuts down.
I mean, let's talk about the system. Right after that goal, we'll get to this in a minute. Peter Drury said he saw Szoboszlai go mad at Mo Salah for not tracking back, which kind of throttles Liverpool's ability to counter-press. We'll get to Mo in a sec. But, I mean, really, there were problems, as you say, all over that field in that first half. Remember, Liverpool hadn't lost 3 in a row in 3 years. They had plenty of time to get themselves back into this. But how they responded was just like slop everywhere. Under-hit passes, over-hit passes from everybody. Gravenberch, Mo, Gakpo, Kirkez all looked like they'd barely played together before, couldn't connect. The midfield in particular looked like they'd just been introduced to each other in the tunnel. McAllister drawing a lot of scrutiny, seemed to be playing as if he'd had a piece of Lego jammed in his boot. Raw, last season we marvelled all year at the idea of possession for this team. The idea of possession's evaporated. Yeah,
one of the things that's been really striking to me in this last week is how many of Liverpool's problems are self-inflicted. And it wasn't quite as true against Chelsea, for reasons that I think we'll come to, as it had been against either Crystal Palace or Galatasaray. But I don't think, if you take that Galatasaray game as the example, I don't think Galatasaray actually opened Liverpool up at all. I think what happened was that occasionally, once every 10 minutes or so, Liverpool just gave the ball to their opponents. And obviously if that happens, you know your whole team is not set, you're not kind of in the right place, you don't have the coverage, you're massively exposed. And I don't quite understand the cause of it because, yeah, as you say, McAllister has been a little bit of a lightning rod for it. He doesn't look fit. He doesn't look like he is ready to play 60 minutes, maybe even 45 minutes of a Premier League football match. I presume he is because Slot keeps putting him in the team, and Arne Slot wouldn't be thinking, do you know what, I'll just give it a go and see if he's okay today. Like, there will be all the data, there'll all be the performance stuff. Like, Alexis McAllister will be performing in training in such a way that Arne Slot thinks he can do an hour, but watching him play, he's a shadow of his former self. What I don't know, and what I'm not qualified to know, Rog, is whether that is something to do with the players themselves underperforming, that it's just that they found it difficult to kind of return to the levels of last season, that there's a little bit of an issue in terms of confidence, that they feel, I don't know, they feel in some way unable to express themselves to the best of their ability. there's also a kind of other factor which people are slightly reticent to refer to, which is the impact of losing Diogo Jota, which I think we have to continue to acknowledge as a factor, even if we maybe can't discuss it in depth until the Liverpool players themselves come out and say, we feel that this needs to be talked about. Or whether it's something to do with the system, because there are a number of new players in that team. There are a number of new ideas in that team. There are different focal points, different emphases. And I wonder whether they are having a hard time adapting to what is now expected of them without reverting to what they used to do. And what you have effectively is kind of a confusion. They look like a team a little bit caught between two stools. There's part of them saying, this is how we used to play, this is what we used to, let's do this. But they know their manager wants something else, something slightly different. And in the white heat of a game, they're not sure which one to pick.
I mean, that is fascinating. And the Jota issue we'll come back to before we close, because as you say, it is a complete conjecture and a complete unknown. We can only kind of use empathy as our guide. But also two things can be true. There can be football reasons and non-football reasons. And looking at these football reasons, I keep thinking about Szoboszlai. Last season came on the show, talked about how I asked him, what do you see when you look over at Slot? You used to Klopp going mad on the sideline. Slot's just standing there. And he said, I see a man with a plan. That plan is working. I've said this a couple of times. When they're not sure of that plan, I'd love to know what they see right now, because the closest they came in that first half was a wafted Salah cross headed over by Isak, who got his body shape all wrong. Really emblematic of the unsyncopated play in that first half. They're there in body, but not in spirit. And we do have to talk about Mo Salah for a moment. 33-year-old. I mean, we have sung ballads about his consistency, his consistent lethality, show on show on show. We've got to say he's struggling to forge a relationship with his frontline colleagues. He's talked about it when he came on. He said it does take time, but just as critical, he's got no Trent Alexander-Arnold just flashing and slashing coming up behind him. And it's all compounded in something we have not seen in a long, long time with Mo Salah in the Premier League. His shooting accuracy just seems to have gone completely. It's watching him. It's almost like an old oak tree which has been uprooted and then replanted in new soil raw, and it's almost yet to adapt to the new surround.
Yeah, and that kind of explains the kind of overall downturn in his performance. Like watching Salah now, he doesn't look quite as involved as in previous years. He looks a little bit short of confidence. The kind of flip side to that is that I think in most of the games that he's played, he's had one or two chances that Mo Salah should score. At Stamford Bridge, there were, I think, 2 or 3 where he cuts inside, he beats a man.
That's his thing.
He's in the Mo Salah position. And at that point, you can't say, well, Arne Slot's system's wrong, or his relationship with Isak isn't right, because he's in the Mo Salah position and his job is to do the Mo Salah thing. And he doesn't do it. And I think as much as there are structural issues with Liverpool's performances, as much as I think both of these defeats in the league and the extra one in the Champions League have been pretty much deserved, narrow but deserved, and as much as I think, to be honest, Liverpool are relatively lucky to have 15 points rather than fewer than that, there have been plenty of times in games where they've had chances, and if the chance goes in, then the whole situation is completely different because the state of the game changes. Galatasaray is the clearest example of that. Hugo Ekitike should score. Hugo Ekitike does not score. Galatasaray gets a penalty. And so instead of forcing Galatasaray to come out and thereby creating more space behind them, Liverpool have to chase a lead, and Galatasaray are perfectly comfortable defending it. Same against Palace, same against Chelsea. Liverpool don't take their chances, and that gives the opposition the chance to kind of play the game that they want to play. And I think in the act of missing those chances, it sounds a bit basic and a bit reductive. That's not really on the manager. If Mo Salah's done a sky one from the edge of the box, where normally in every other year of his time in England he would score, or at least get it on target, then that's not really Arne Slot's fault.
Yeah, I mean, I feel for Ekitike. You talk about footballers grappling when they have 2 instructions in their mind at crucial moments. Like when he pulls his foot back and he says to himself, am I meant to keep my shirt on? Do I take it off? And which one is it? I can't remember. It's hard.
He's refusing to score goals in case he takes his shirt off. It's the safest way, Rog.
It is. It's the fight or flight of that moment. It just must be. We mere mortals can't even relate. But into the second half, an example of it, Liverpool moved Szoboszlai to right back, flung Wirtz on. I have a producer, Jaleesa Castrodale, who's massive red. She texted me when he came on. She said, Wirtz is like some ornate piece of couture that Liverpool bought from a Paris Fashion Week, got it home and just have no idea how to wear properly. Well, he strolled on this piece of couture, and I think within a couple of seconds, 2 sublime touches, set up Mo Salah, to your point, for a chance he would have lashed home last season, slotted wide, just got the mechanics all wrong this. And 55 minutes in, Slot, it's got to be said, truly juggling his options here. For a spell, he had Gravenberch in at centre-back alongside Szoboszlai. It was so mad. Getting Curtis Jones into the midfield. Liverpool essentially tried to get the tempo up by playing 2 lines of midfield. Chelsea were reduced for a spell to just foraging. And 63rd minute, it clicked. Szoboszlai thrashed across. Isak flicked it deliciously. I thought he meant this. Ton of pundits said heavy touch, but I am completely sure that he meant this. It was just, the touch of a tender lover. Gakpo, Hulk smashed home. This was Chelsea, remember, with both centre-backs. When they were playing, they were so young. Badashtil, 19-year-old, Achampong, so good. But they had 3 full-backs on by full-time. What did you think in that moment when you scored? Be honest, were you like, game on? I know how this one ends, because I felt like that.
I'm maybe more pessimistic than you. My sense was that I'd seen this before, and that not that long ago, and that Liverpool are too open and too unreliable at the moment, too inconsistent to be sure of anything. But you do feel at the same time, and I think this isn't necessarily just a Liverpool fan thing, you look at the talent of the players on the pitch, and there is a working assumption that at some point it's going to be like, oh, actually, this is how this works. Oh, yeah. And against the Chelsea team, as you say, that
backline
that started with their first choice central defenders out, I think their third choice central defender out, and then proceeded to lose all of their central defenders to injury. You think, well, there is a point at which, okay, Liverpool are a little bit uncertain at the back, they are still too open, but there is so much attacking talent on the pitch, you should be able to break them down again. You should be able to find your way through this makeshift Chelsea backline at least once more.
Yeah, I don't know where Todd Burley is in the centre-back depth chart left for Chelsea. They have gone through centre-backs like Cleveland Browns have gone through quarterbacks. But, again, conversation for another time, a legacy of the Club World Cup. Just so many injuries for so many players who had to play in that and then not prepare properly for the craziness of the season. But as a result, Liverpool, I did expect them to go on. I've seen this movie before. It's almost like Police Academy 5. I've seen it so many times. They had, I don't know if this is a word, they had plenty of maraudings. But Chelsea, so useful, so bloody fearless. In this one, they kept coming bravely. 2 huge saves within seconds of each other from Mamashvili. And late on, both teams were just tearing into each other. It was really remarkable to witness as a complete neutral, I assure you. It was desperate. They were almost clawing at each other. Huge admiration for Chelsea. Got to note again, they were doing it without Cole Palmer. And Estevao had looked like a live wire in a late cameo since he came on. He was really, for a teen in the Premier League, after having to wait so long after being signed for this moment, he was bloody fearless. 96 minutes, sweeping move from Chelsea, constructed from their own box. Enzo Fernandez coaxed the ball to Cucurella. He reached the byline. I've got to say, credit him for the incredibly arched ball that he swept across the face of the box. And it was Estevao who sprung upon it with teenage kicks, almost beat, is it 87-year-old Andy Robertson at the far post, angled it beautifully into the net. Roy, in that moment, it was like seeing Steve, as the Chelsea fans call him, Steve, a new hero born. And I don't know what must have felt for him, just roaring away, first official goal. I saw videos this weekend of a 2-year-old girl in Nepal. It was named a living goddess too. Incredible scenes over there. And I don't like to be hyperbolic, Raw, but this felt eerily similar.
Maybe that's pushing it a little bit, Rog, but they have got really high hopes for Estevao Willi, and he is, the reports coming out of Brazil when they signed him were, this is the best kid we've seen since Vinicius. Chelsea, I think, have been really impressed by how quickly he's taken to the Premier League. He has needed a little bit of sort of adaptation time. He'll be in and out of the team. But as you say, he was a jolt of electricity in that game. He kind of enlivened it again, helped to turn the tide. Because there was a point, maybe 15 minutes ago, where Liverpool looked like they were starting to kind of turn the screw a little bit. And Chelsea, partly thanks to Westerval, partly thanks to Romeo Lavia, I think, managed to sort of wrest it back. And you saw the reaction from the players, from the stadium, but above all from Maresca. I don't think I've ever seen anyone move that fast in public in taupe leisure wear, which does admittedly undercut the emotion of the moment. But it was a really big goal for Chelsea because all the circumstances that we've been talking about that mean Liverpool should have won or should have performed better, that all applies to Chelsea in reverse, doesn't it? This was a team that was without Cole Palmer, as you say, their best player, that had lost basically all of their central defenders, playing the champions, and they had managed to conjure a victory when maybe they might have been even resigned themselves to a draw in other circumstances. And that's the sort of result that can really kind of ignite a season. Massive
when you look at it, particularly after just the absolute agony of the past couple of weeks where Chelsea's own fans had directed at Maresca for being too cautious, far too conservative. And you could see in that run, you're completely right, when he ran down the sideline screaming almost like, the red card is mine this week, mofos. I mean, you could see the joy. You could see the relief fuse in equal measure. It was both of those emotions for that man. So much job speculation for that gentleman. So many injuries. As I say, a lot of anger from the fan base directed at him for his tactics, for his substitutions. And on this day, so courageous, so fearless, no Cole Palmer, his sun and moon. But still so positive against the champions, Raw. When really, this was a game to be. We got a point. Let's see this out. Everything he did was just coax that extra ounce of belief out of his raw young collective. It was humanly remarkable.
It was, and as you say, he had been under a lot of pressure. It was starting to mount, as it always does at Chelsea whenever results aren't great for a couple of weeks. That there was this sort of lingering sense that maybe Maresca was starting to lose the backing of the ever-changing hierarchy at Chelsea, the number of kind of political factions who have control at Chelsea. It's very hard to keep track of, but apparently some of them had stopped liking Maresca. And I think you could see all that in the celebration, because that was, it is October. Do you know what I mean? It's not the end of the season. That's not taking you to the Champions League final. But the emotion in that moment was genuine and sincere and pure. And I think at least part of it was just Maresca knows that this will have bought him quite a lot of time, bought him quite a lot of credit, both internally inside the club, but also with the fans who are, I think, at Chelsea quite difficult to please now. I think it's a tricky club to succeed, Chelsea, just because expectations are so high and they're kind of out of step with what the model is in terms of the players that you've got.
Yeah, it's constantly, you have to constantly win. It's like being at a blackjack table and you're constantly given a 15 or a 16 in terms of how, and then working out how you want to play it. But God bless for Maresca on this day, and for Liverpool, to say well played Premier League scriptwriters, well played late goals. Really a sadomasochistic love affair. After all those early winners, Liverpool lose back-to-back league games for the first time in the Slot era on goals scored in the 97th and 95th minutes. That is, there's a poetry in that. Third straight loss for the first time for Arne. There's a lot of things I want to ask you here, Rolf, from the pure football, which we'll begin with, to the truly existential. So first of all, let me ask you something pure about the game. We're in the 94th minute. Point was going to be fine here at Stamford Bridge. Fine point. Defeat would be a disaster optically going into an international break. Why did Arne Slot, who's been complaining in weeks past about individual players being reckless late on, why did he leave the game so open and his own formation so stretched? No shape. Jamie Carragher been banging the drum that he sees Slot's tactics suddenly as wide open as a basketball game. It was astonishing to risk that narrative flip here. Your team are still gelling, but to leave them open that late when a draw would have been fine, to me that's hard to fully understand. He's now got to spend the whole international break fighting the optics of tabloid fire.
Yeah, I guess the problem with the question, Rog, is we don't know for certain that was Slot's intention. I mean, it might be, I guess, that his view was if you sink back, if you drop deep, you're inviting trouble. And that's how a lot of managers think, that if you go too defensive, it's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy. And against a team with the quality of Chelsea, even if it's young and unreliable and inconsistent, then that could be a problem. I wonder to an extent whether Liverpool are predicated on the fact that, you know, the rewards for going for a win from that position are far greater than the cost in terms of pure points, not in terms of narrative. I agree with you completely on the narrative. The rewards of success, if you win that game, are much greater than the cost if you lose it. But also, it might just be that, you know, Chelsea were on the pitch too. More than one team has agency. That's one of the complicating factors with football. It might be that Slot wanted to control it and couldn't.
I mean, this is new now, irrespective. For Liverpool under Arne Slot, this is incredible. Over a year, I think 24 September 2024, since Arne Slot's team went at least level on points at the top of the Premier League table. So going slightly bigger picture, when all the new bodies in the transfer window started to arrive, just superstar after superstar, or you know, young prodigy arriving, and we're all absolutely just looking on aghast. I corresponded with someone at Liverpool and said, I texted him and said, God, you're becoming a super team. Like an NBA super team. And he immediately texted me back a photo of the 2014 Brooklyn Nets and said, don't say that. The problem with super teams is they rarely work because everybody wants the ball. And it is fascinating to me, Raw. This is now on Arne Slot to fix. Well, last season, we saw his ideas bedded onto the echo almost of Klopp's ideas, like Arsene Wenger. Is seen to have inherited the quite defensively robust George Graham's physicality. And that led to, in the early years, his most dominant Arsenal teams. In the same way, Lesser, but Roberto Martinez at Everton, a very attacking footballer, but had his best season immediately after he inherited David Moyes' defensive muscle there. Arne now has to adapt a new squad, distance now from the Klopp era to his new philosophy on the fly. This is very much on Arne Slot now, Ru.
Yeah, do you know, you'll be unsurprised to learn, Rog, that I have quite a lot of thoughts on this subject. I don't want to kind of overwhelm anybody. I think that point that the alloy tends to be stronger than the base metal is true, and that there are countless examples of that throughout football, that managers who come in with a new set of ideas and kind of graft them on to what went before tends to be quite successful. I suppose the flip side to that is that there are still quite a lot of Klopp elements in this team. For all that they've signed a lot of players this summer. Alisson, Virgil van Dijk, Konate, Salah, Jones, McAllister, Szoboszlai, Gravenberch. They are all Klopp players. My feeling, I've got to admit, and this is maybe more as fan than professional neutral observer, is I wonder whether Slot's moved a little too quickly to get those players into the team. I remember when Liverpool signed Andy Robertson from Hull City, which was not nearly as exciting as them signing Alexander Isak from Newcastle. Robertson basically didn't appear for 4 months. He just wasn't there because the left-back spot was being held by Alberto Moreno. And I don't know if you remember Alberto Moreno, Rog, but he wasn't very good. And the assumption among the fans was, well, Robertson's obviously been bought as a backup. He was £8 million, $11 million from Hull. They'd been relegated. He's British, so he counts as homegrown. He's obviously just kind of a squad player, fringe, maybe even a flip. Maybe, Liverpool keep him for a year or two, then sell him on for £12 million to Sunderland or West Ham or someone.
Everton.
And then in December, Andy Robertson appeared in the Liverpool team and was instantly amazing. And you thought, oh, so that's what they've been doing. They've been getting him used to the system. It has surprised me the speed with which Slot has kind of put everyone in that team. I wonder whether it might, and it's, I can't sit here and tell a manager how to do their jobs, but I've got to admit, even when the money was flowing and the signings were rolling in, I was expecting the transition from one thing to the next to be much slower. I thought it maybe wouldn't be December, January until we saw a Liverpool team that had Kirkez and Frimpong and Isak and Ekitike in it. Whereas he's kind of done it immediately. And I actually think one of the problems he's got is that he's now caught a little bit between two stools, that Liverpool are trying to become Arne Slot's Liverpool, and because it's not working, there will be something in the players' brains, and I think increasingly in Slot's brain, saying, well, we could just switch back to that. So Florian Wirtz has been dropped. You know, the last 2 games he's not started, I think, in the Premier League, which has made him a little bit of a cause célèbre, as though he's the problem. I don't think that's necessarily true, but it strikes me that Slot is looking at the team and thinking, I need to find something that I can kind of rely on effectively. And what can you rely on? A 4-3-3.
God, I mean, it is fascinating. Also, once you've started with these players, like you kind of like, if you drop them now, you're destroying their confidence. It's like you can't ease. There's no easing these human beings in. They're in, and they're out now. But you can't once you put them in, you can't undo that.
Yeah, it's really uneasy that if you take them out, and I think Wirtz this is happening to him to an extent already. Is that an implicit criticism of their performance? At what point do you make that switch back to a system in which Florian Wirtz can thrive? And I do wonder basically whether Slot has played it wrong. That the misstep has been going for it, you know, all out. Here's the new team. This is what we're doing now. We're going to stick with it. And then starting to think when performances and then results have kind of varied a little bit, you kind of change back, and it's well, maybe the midfield sobbers like Gravenberch and McAllister, as it was against Chelsea, because you're not solving the problem, you're just delaying it. So I wonder whether, although Liverpool might be uneven for some time, you're better in the long run just saying, actually, this is what we want to be in the future, so that's what we're going to do. We're going to make this work. Because otherwise everything gets very muddled. The problem is, and I think this is genuinely interesting, a lot of people here certainly have said, oh, you know, maybe this is Liverpool's transition season. That's a little bit kind, given the amount of money they spent in the summer. Maybe if you spend that much, you don't get a transition season. But also, even if it is a transition season, every game is Liverpool. They're the champions. They're one of the biggest clubs in the country.
Your transition season can't be your defending the title season. Those two narratives do have to combine.
And they certainly can't be your season after spending $500 million in the transfer market. You don't get a transition season. And even if the figures were less and the honours last year hadn't come, I don't think Liverpool get a transition season. I think like Manchester United, like Arsenal, like Chelsea, the expectation is you win every game. And if you don't, you will be criticised and you will be under pressure and there will be questions asked. And I think the problem that Slot has is that, look, they've lost 2 games to goals in the 95th and 97th minute, both away from home, both against teams who'll finish in the top 10 of the Premier League. Chelsea, theoretical title contenders. Palace, when they played them before they went to Fortress Hill Dickinson, were the form team in Europe. Like, on the surface, they're obviously not good results, but they're not terrible results. You know, it's understandable to lose those games. And certainly in a transition season, you'd be like, well, that's the sort of thing that can happen. But look at the scrutiny that they're under. There is no such thing as a transition season. It doesn't exist in elite football at that level.
To use pundit talk, this is Liverpool Football Club we're talking about, Raw. And the fascinating point is, as we head into the international break, which is the real Liverpool? Were those first 5 games and those late winners there a false friend? I mean, when you talk about easing players in, it was working until it didn't, and we do not know what the true Liverpool is. And as you hinted earlier, and I do want to wrap with this, the one thing that we have zero insight into, but remains an enormous, I'd say an unknown, a shadow cast inextricably over the entire season, is the impact of Diogo Jota's death, the loss, the mourning, the impact of grief on this collective. If you're tempted to write in and say, you know, we all deal with loss, you just get on with it, don't you? I'd just say, you know, spare yourself the time on this, because football locker rooms are both A, fragile cultures, and B, this is unprecedented in the modern period to have that kind of loss in a moment of title victory and the scrutiny, and then just not there the next year in this deeply public, globally public reality, in which the personal sense of loss we all feel when you lose someone you love is experienced both privately, but also with immense collective mourning and ritual that's constantly surrounding you, essentially in the workplace. Liverpool are going to work often, and are having to mourn publicly, collectively. And as you said, the Liverpool players have not talked about it very much. They understandably asked interviewers to avoid the topic completely in the pre-season out of respect for the players who are essentially mourners in this moment. But Raw, post-game, Virgil van Dijk did say this. He said, I've said repeatedly this season will be tough. It was always going to be ups and downs for multiple reasons that we shouldn't forget. All we have to do is stick together. Raw, these footballers are human, playing amidst grief and sorrow. Grief at times can focus you, but grief can also at very much times, it can tear you apart.
Yeah, do you know, I've seen a lot of people saying kind of, oh, you know, everyone deals with loss, which is absolutely true. And you know, you still have to go to work, which is also absolutely true. But I think it's fair to say that in most jobs, you can maybe phone it in for a bit. That if you're going through something, whatever it might be, and you are not, you know, fully across your marketing presentation, or you are not as, you know, productive in terms of numbers as you might be, you'll get away with it. I think one of the things that is continually missed about elite sports as a whole, probably not just soccer, although that's obviously the bit that I know about, is how much of a difference even the slightest dip can make. And people say, you know, if you're 10% off it. No footballer is ever 10% off it, ever. Not even the Everton ones. They might be 0.0005% off it. They might just not be quite... They might not even know that they're off it. You're talking about these tiny infinitesimal percentages. And yeah, it's inconceivable that the grief that Liverpool's players and those players elsewhere who knew Jota are going through isn't going to affect their performances in some way. For people like Pedro Neto, who was really close to him, he'll be hugely affected, but he doesn't have those daily reminders of Jota's absence. He might be able to go into work and use it as an escape. Liverpool's players don't have that escape. It is inconceivable it's not affecting them. They may not realise it's affecting them. It doesn't explain all of the footballing shortcomings. As you say, Rog, two things can be true at once. But I think it's a real test for us, as I've said this before, that it's really easy to pay lip service to this stuff, to say, oh, you know, we've got to be kind to Liverpool players. But what's wrong with Ibrahima Konate? And I think it's a real test of how we cover football, of how we talk about football, both as content creators, people in the content minds, Rog, and fans. Because you have to have some level of understanding. Yes, you have to go to work, but there is absolutely no guarantee that you can perform to your maximum. And the people that you are watching play football have to perform to their maximum, because if they even slip by the tiniest percentage point, they lose football matches and you shout at them. So it's a real test, it's a real challenge, and I think it's totally understandable that Liverpool have taken the stance that they don't want it to be brought up. It feels quite glib talking about it before the Liverpool players have talked about it. But you're right, I thought the same thing about that Van Dijk quote. That's the first time I've even heard it obliquely referred to by a player, which makes me think he thinks that it's not being factored in enough.
And I think that these players are very much caught. If they do start talking about it, it's going to, you know, let's just say the football conversation is not that kind. It's not that empathetic. It is deeply partisan, and to have it thrown back in their faces, all they can be is fairly mum, fairly stoic publicly. I think we will have to wait probably years to find out exactly the story of this season. But I do wait for them. There's a line that John Irving wrote, I think in a prayer for Owen Meany. He wrote, when someone you love dies and you're not expecting it, you don't lose her all at once. You lose her in pieces over a long time. The way the mail stops coming and a scent fades from the pillows and even from the clothes in a closet and drawers. Gradually, you accumulate the parts of her that are gone. And just when the day comes, when there's a particular missing part that overwhelms you with the feeling that she's gone forever, there comes another day and another specifically missing part. So I just say God bless to all at Liverpool. And just as they hadn't won the league when they were 5 points ahead after, 5 games, they are by no means out of it. Now they've had this stumble. There is so much football twist and turn to come. But earlier in the day, Saturday was a wild day. It seemed very boring until the Premier League scriptwriters revealed why they had allowed the things to simmer down a little bit. But this game, Arsenal 2, West Ham 0, Mikel Arteta had survived the opening gauntlet of quite brutal games. That fixture list early on, but they'd done it bloody admirably. 7 wins, was it 1 loss, 1 draw, 5 clean sheets. Had revealed they had multiple goal threats, which is new. Cover for every position, starters, finishers. I think they had just 1 goal conceded in open play. Enter Nuno's West Ham, your new leader, your handpan king, in his second game. Psychological challenge, really, because the Hammers, remember, had been the winners of the last 2 at the Emirates. Hard to believe, even Graham Potter won there, kneecapping Arsenal's last 2 title charges. So Arteta rang up 300 games in charge at Arsenal by unleashing Saka, Ødegaard, Eze and Gyökeres for the first time as a Super 4. It didn't last long. Arsenal locked down possession, asserted dominance, but then Ødegaard limped off. I think, was it half an hour that he lasted, sustaining, quote, a medial collateral ligament injury. We'll have to wait to see how long that keeps him out of. We do need to know what an agony it was to watch him. He just bounced back from injury. He just played his most complete game, ran the game against the Olympiacos midweek, but grim statistic, Raw. Ødegaard became the first player in Premier League history to be substituted before half-time in 3 straight Premier League starts. Metalface T3 in our Discord channel wrote, Ødegaard must start playing with football shoulder pads and volleyball knee pads immediately. It's an agony to witness.
Yeah, it does feel as though the injuries are sort of curtailing what should be his peak years a little bit. And I don't know how you get out of that, because the schedule is so relentless that I'm not sure he has time or chance to recover fully, because Arsenal, Arsenal can't afford to wait. If they were mid-table and it was April and nothing was going to happen, you could maybe say, do you know what, Martin? Take the next 2 months off. Just get ready. Fine. But you can't do that. It's October. They're in the thick of the title race. They'll have ambitions, aspirations of winning the Champions League as well. They are one of the world's leading football teams. He is still their sort of centrifugal creative force. He will want to be back. The team will want to have him back. He improves them. So does that mean that he's permanently playing in this sort of slightly suboptimal, slightly just short of full fitness state? And that seems to be what kind of brings him to the edge so readily.
Yeah, I mean, it's an agony for Arsenal fans who watch the game in the flesh. If you do, you see just how much Martin Ødegaard, outside of how he touches the ball, is actually Arteta's leader on the field, triggering the press, speaking to them. I mean, he really is the conductor of that entire team. Massive, massive loss. But Arsenal broke through in the 38th minute, stunning through ball from Zubamendi, unleashed Eze, stung Gariola's palms with a low drive for the keeper, did honestly quite well to punch away, fell to, of course it was him, Declan Rice, swept the ball home with admirable control, even more control in not celebrating Raw. I mean, yes, he was a hammer, but since he left, I think West Ham fans have, honestly, as much as they've beaten Arsenal, they seem to take even more pleasure in singing "You Should Have Stayed with a Big Club" and just baiting him. I've got to say, I watched that moment and thought, I will never play poker with Declan Rice. His poker face is so admirable. I think he used more energy to not celebrate Raw than he did actually to score the goal.
I would have said it was halfway to a celebration, though. It wasn't a full-on turnaround, walk back to the centre circle. There was a little bit of running.
When he jogged behind the goal.
Yeah, I'd say that the act of jogging behind the goal is a celebration. He might not have had his arms pumping and his face contorted, but it was still a celebration. If he scores against them next year, I think he's taking his shirt off.
But I think we have to send this to the celebration police, the Supreme Court, for a ruling. When does a celebration begin? That's like, in baseball, when do you actually break the wrists between a ball and a strike for a hitter? When technically does a celebration actually begin? Because I did watch that and I thought, hello, it's happening, and then he just whoom.
There were a couple of little looks back over his shoulder as well, which was, I think, to the section of the Emirates where the away fans sit. So they would be the West Ham fans. And he's just kind of looking back at them. And is he saying coquettishly, look, I might celebrate this time, lads? Am I going to? No.
To your point, he's laying the foundation for his next goal. I think
next season shirt off, season after that full strip.
Yeah, and then season after that, he'll have in gangster writing, he'll be like "F.U. Hammers" tattoo,
or just the word Millwall across his chest.
Oh, do it now, baby! I'm gonna say West Ham's tactics were like Manchester City's, and I say that not in a good way, but they were like the poor man's Manchester City. Didn't so much manage a shot on goal the whole game, and it was 2-0 when Timber brought down well on the spin on the edge of the area, humped. Pretty well, totally humped by Diouf. 200th game, up-stepped Bukayo Saka to convert the penalty with aplomb. Ringing up, quite beautiful symmetry. Is it 55 goals, 45 assists, 100 goal involvements? Still only 24. He's a baby. Just joy for Arsenal in that moment. Clean sheet again, not a shot on target, not a glove laid on them. Only way it could have got better is if Gyökeres scored. Well, this was as comfortable, as professional, as routine a win, as drama-free vibes a win as Arsenal get, Raw. And that was honestly a relatively new and really welcome feeling in its own right.
Yeah, I think it almost is more significant than the win at Newcastle. And I remember thinking last week, we may even have discussed it on the pod, Rog, that Arsenal do have a habit of producing statement wins. And there's this feeling, they've won this game, they've beaten Man City or they've beaten Man United later on, they won at Newcastle. This is Arsenal's proof that they can do it. And Arteta said that after St James's Park. He said this was we've shown the world who we are. And what normally happens after that is that Arsenal go and lose at home to West Ham. That is absolutely what happens every single time. So to win this game, and I think particularly to win it so undramatically, first half goal, second half goal, game finishes, kind of a damp squib, to be honest. Like you'd have gone home from the Emirates feeling happy that your team had won.
Box ticked.
But yeah, exactly. It was okay. Yeah, we have completed. That is a fixture that has been knocked off the calendar. And I think that's exactly what Arsenal needed, because that is how you win titles. Liverpool had an entire season of them last season. And you don't win titles by scoring in the 96th minute at Newcastle. You win titles by beating West Ham 2-0 at home while expending as little energy as possible.
Yeah, box ticking, technocracy or whatever the word is. Just doing the business relentlessly. That Arsenal is the one I'm so excited to see in 2025-26. To third place, checks notes, Tottenham Hotspur, who scored twice at Leeds to win at Fortress Ellen Road in a cock derby. Battle between the Peacocks and the Cockerels. Leeds defended their unbeaten home record. Truly incredible. They had not lost at Bear Pit Ellen Road in over a year. Up came then fourth place Spurs, biggest name yet to arrive up north. They brought their best away record with them, 7 points from their 3 previous away games. 6 changes to the team that frankly laboured in the Arctic north of the wall at Bodo Glimt midweek in their Champions League draw. Leeds battered them from the outset, charged at them really at helter-skelter pace. Leeds faithful bellowing their team to get stuck in, which they did. They dominated possession. And of course, Spurs waited until they could get in behind. And with their very first shot on goal, Tell banked one in off the quite unfortunate Strook. Leeds responded quite impressively. Dominic Calvert-Lewin, God bless him, best-smelling footballer, or top 3 best-smelling footballers in the league, missed a quite glorious chance. But then he knocked the ball down for Brendan Aronson. His lash parried by Vicario, but up the gut, and Okafor stabbed home into the empty net. Raw is possibly the most Leeds goal of all time. The inflatable ball creeping towards the line at the very same time Okafor's shot. Kind of that inflatable attempting to steal the spotlight. It was peak Ellen Road.
It was. I can't stress enough how windy it has been in England the last few days, Rog. That's what happens in the Premier League when it's windy. Stuff starts blowing onto the pitch. That's just how it is. When I saw the little black and white kind of inflatable ball drift across, I thought there was a chance they'd ruled the goal out. Because I think, in theory, if a what do they call them, a foreign object interferes with play, then you're meant to stop the game. And it's one of those where I wonder if Vicario had really kicked up a fuss, they might have had to look at it.
I've watched it a lot. The ball kind of crosses the line and then it just makes its own slow, late, delicious arrival, like Enter the Dragon. Vicario, God bless him, actually saves it. He goes through the motion of just swatting it away in anger. It is a gorgeous...
I've got that one.
Yeah, got that. Do I get anything for that, mate? But just stat padding, Vicario. God bless. Both teams energised, but a little blunt up top. One in the 57th minute. Kudus flinging himself down the right cut inside, shot on goal. Another deflection, again off Strook again. Oh, the poor dude was in absolute agony. Just am I a human backboard? A goalkeeper left flat-footed. Kudus don't care. First goal for Spurs after that $72 million move. I think Thomas Frank said it was about time that he scored, which I just love. New team, same old Selly. A king back on his plastic throne. Raw. Tottenham, 3 shots on goal, 2 goals. But robust under Thomas Frank. Yes, they lost the XG 1.68 to 0.53, but they don't cough up leads. I think they're the only team in this late goal era not to have conceded in the last 15 minutes of any game, which in the madness of this chaos season is incredible. More of the same here. Defended really well, and Spurs won their 5th in a row over Leeds. Raw, significantly, I said this up top, they're the first team to win at Ellen Road since February the 8th, 238 days. First to win there in the league since September the 14th, 385 days ago. Thomas Frank, Raw, is building something. Well, you tell me what he's building. 1 defeat in 7 games, 3rd win from 4 on the road. How good are they, Raw? Because I don't think even they know for real.
Yeah, there's definitely been an improvement. I mean, they finished 17th last season, so maybe that's not that hard. But I think if you look at the individuals involved, he seems to be getting more out of players than had been happening previously. So obviously Kudus has come in and looks like he's the sort of player who should be playing for a Champions League team. But even like Richarlison looks kind of revitalised to an extent. They look more solid, more organised. We know with Spurs that if Mickey van der Ven and Christian Romero are there, that they are a really good team. I think there's reasons for encouragement, and the main one is how quietly they've been able to kind of build something this season. That there's not this sort of relentless focus on them as there was under Conte, under Mourinho, and even under Ange to an extent. Thomas Frank is a thoroughly sensible appointment and is a great guy. He's a really nice man, but he's kind of boring from a kind of scrutiny point of view. He is a nice, intelligent, completely rational human being. He's very Danish. There's not much to kind of get worked up about there for either fans or the kind of media around it. So he's just kind of left to get on with it. And that, I think, really works for Spurs. They've got up to 3rd without really anybody noticing. The flip side, I guess, is that they have been a little bit up and down in individual games. I thought, Bodo, they were 2-0 down to our beloved Bodo Glimt, Rog, which is not great. Just Bodo Glimt are, in comparison to Spurs' budget, Bodo really are not the sort of team that should be putting up a fight. I actually thought Leeds were probably the better team at Elland Road on Saturday lunchtime. They looked really good, Leeds, and once DCL gets his eye in, I think Leeds will have a real weapon there. But they cause Spurs all sorts of problems. So it's a little bit early to say. The signs have to be encouraging for Thomas Frank, and I think the longer he can go without anyone really realising they're 3rd, the better. But at the same time, to think that they're able to maybe exceed the expectation that they will compete to qualify for the Champions League, I think the performances would need to be better at this stage.
Talking of top 4, Bournemouth 3, Fulham 1. This is not a drill. Golden War cherries are flying. $270 million worth of first-team players left during the summer, but they keep on keeping on after holding on to their one massive star, Antoine Semenyo. And he solo proves to be the green shoots of revival. The Ghanaian winger, honestly been a player of the season candidate here. He single-handedly propelled the Golden War Cherries back to life in a sensational come-from-behind victory. 2 goals, 1 assist. The first goal, 25-year-old picked the ball up so deep on the left, it was like a kick return. Left defenders for dead, took it to the byline, and from the most acute angle, cockily slotted the ball right through goalkeeper Burnley's legs. It was amazing to witness. Then set up a Justin Kluivert banger before killing the game off in the 96th minute. 6 league goals on the season, only behind Manchester City's generational goal scorer, who we'll talk about in a minute, Erling Haaland. He's an amazing story, Semenyo. Since the start of May, he's been involved in more goals than any other player in the Premier League. 12, I think 8 goals, 4 assists. What's amazing, it's really his journey. He was brought from Bristol City. They found him in the South Gloucestershire and Stroud College Academy, where he was just utterly stuck at the age of 17. Been rejected by Arsenal, Spurs, even Millwall. Bristol City signed him, but then loaned him out to Bath, to Newport, to Sunderland, before he broke into the Robins first team, I think, in 2020. Essentially, he languished, was in the bargain bin, he was in the lost and found. He was as close to a dead letter office footballer as it can be. And now we're all living really the Semenyo naissance. It's incredible, Roy. He was favoured to leave last January. Chelsea were interested. His head was said to be turned, but instead he stayed. Signed a 5-year deal back in July. And there's that phrase, I think, was it Red Auerbach, the Celtic coach, said, sometimes the best trades are the ones that you don't make. He is a match winner. What do you see in him becoming? Because his story is amazing. He's now one of the most dominant players in the Premier League. Is he almost too good? Should we be afraid or Bournemouth curious football fans that he could be gone in January?
January maybe not, because I think the amount of money that Bournemouth would want for him now is so high that it's not the sort of thing a team would necessarily commit to, I guess, unless they're Chelsea, in January. I think he will see out the season with Bournemouth, but there's no question that the way he's playing, if he can maintain it, he will be the sort of player who will be fetching a lot of money next summer if Bournemouth choose that is what is in their interest. They seem to be extremely good at selling players when they know they've got someone to replace them, who might even in long term prove to be an upgrade. I think what's strange is that Semenyo didn't go this summer, and I wonder whether a lot of teams looked at him and kind of had him second on their list for, one of the attacking roles. They thought, well, if we can't get our primary target, we'll get Antoine Semenyo. And I wonder how many of those teams will regret it come the end of this season.
Filming with my friend Tyler Adams this afternoon. Cannot wait to hear him talk about both Semenyo and what, if anything, feels different about this season as opposed to last season where they burnt brightly and then fell away. And talking about, falling away and not falling away. Brentford 0, Manchester City 1. Again, it was a bit like watching a cobra battle a mongoose. Last week, Keith Andrews they really embarrassed Manchester United at the G-Tech here. Brentford were looking to become just the second team to beat both Manchester clubs in consecutive league games since Tottenham in 1996. I think that hope lasted about 9 minutes. Erling Haaland picked up the ball where he loves to, on the shoulder of the last defender, just bodied two opponents with power and pace. I mean, just a nuanced footballer to steady himself, then lashed home 18th goal for club and country in just 11 games. I mean, these statistics are, at this point, so insane. I don't think we can compute them. I do believe when I saw this goal, Raw, I was like, I know we're all worried about ChatGPT taking over. I look at Erling Haaland as the only thing saving civilization, because there's surely no computer no robot overlord even, could do what he does, Raw. I mean, that's the slim hope I'm holding on to, but I back myself.
I mean, he literally looks like Dolph Lundgren in Universal Soldier. Like, how can Erling Haaland possibly be like the avatar to save humanity from the robots when he is clearly himself a cyborg? That is obvious.
Yeah, it's so funny. Afterwards, he said something beautiful. He said, I've never felt better than I do now. It's about preparation, getting ready for the games. You can be physically ready, but you need to be mentally ready. And then he said about his newborn child, he said, with a kid, it makes me even better because I disconnect more than ever. I don't think about football at all. And when I'm mentally, funny you're talking about cyborgs, when I imagined his kid, I briefly flickered that Megan from that movie, Raw. But God bless. And it's amazing to watch him. He's 9 league goals now. Only 6 other clubs in their entirety have more. Just incredible statistics. The only other City scorer in double figures, Burnley centre-back, Maxime Esteve, who netted that pair of own goals a couple of weeks ago. I mean, Raw, we expected City to go on and just kill the game off, but this is a different City. They lack, I'm not sure it's hunger. It's more kind of the control to put the game away, just as they lapsed twice against Monaco in the Champions League when Haaland was pissed off afterwards, said, not good enough. City, honestly, they were barely good enough. Lost Rodri to a hamstring injury queue, a barrage of B-strings from set pieces and long throws. Thiago blew the best chance, I think, for Brentford. He was a one-on-one with a big Doner Kebab, Donnarumma. And God bless City with that big man up top, the big man at the back. That's how they're doing it. But it was nervy, Raw. It really is. I mean, you watch Pep and Haaland now, talk about Ødegaard and Arteta. The two of them are now in constant conversation to try and lock down the game, which they did. Pep's 250th win in just his 349th game, faster than any man previously by some distance. I think Sir Alex Ferguson second with, 404 games. But this was Pep at his happiest post-game. A win, but with an incredible list of grievances and ability to really lament his entire team's performance.
Yeah, I think what we're seeing actually from City at the moment, it'll depend a little bit on the extent of Rodri's injury. Hopefully it's not very long. But this is Erling Haaland against Arsenal this Premier League season. It is a City team that is in transition, that is changing. Pep is trying to kind of reshoot it again. And the thing that is keeping them in contention, that is getting them edging up that table, is the fact that they have this generationally talented striker who will score. I think he's scoring at the rate of about 2 a game at the moment. And the test really is, can Erling Haaland keep Manchester City within touching distance of whoever is top of the table until such a point as Guardiola's new look City, his new version of City clicked. Because if he can, then there is something really genuinely special and fearsome happening at Manchester City. But a lot of it rests, and it's the first time, even with Messi at Barcelona, it's maybe the first time you'd say a lot of it rests on one player's shoulders. That it's about Erling Haaland. This isn't a Manchester City team that has been built and Haaland has been grafted onto it to make them even better. This is a City team that exists to set the stage for Erling Haaland. He is their most significant figure, maybe even ahead of Guardiola. And that's the first time anyone could say that for a long time.
God, talking about Haaland, the joy at the end, I've got to say, an extremely chill Erling jumped into the crowd. That shot of the fan kissing him post-game, when other players honestly would recoil. Haaland legit seems to be loving every single moment. And talking about loving every single moment, Newcastle 2, Nottingham Forest 0. You can't spell change without Ange. Poor old Postecoglou. He's not even had time to figure out how to fix the printer in his new office, and he's already on the hot seat. First permanent Nottingham Forest manager in 100 years. Is that good? To be winless in his first 6 games since taking over. He only took over September the 9th. His latest nightmare, savage 3-2 Europa League defeat to FC Midtjylland. A loss that left Forest fans serenading their own manager, their own non-Nuno manager, with you getting sacked in the morning. Reports bubbling up he could indeed be sacked if they lost here. St James's Park, a bloody tough place to go then. And they went pragmatic. 5 at the back, and the first half Forest looked disciplined, looked resolute. Dare I say, they looked a little Nuno-esque, 0-0 at the half. But then in the 58th minute, unravelled when Morgan Gibbs-White shoved off the ball by Bruno Guimaraes. He exchanged passes with Dan Burn, channeled his constant simmering fury into a stunning straight arch past Matt Seltz in the Forest goal. 1-0. There was a shot of Ange just ruefully shaking his head, which broke me a little bit because it would get worse for Forest. 82nd minute, Newcastle youth product returning home. The otherwise excellent Elliot Anderson dispossessed by Guimaraes again. He lunged in Anderson recklessly on the Brazilian. Really the entire Postecoglou tenure summed up in one awful tackle. And like an NBA team sending their centre up to shoot 3 throws after a technical upstep, Nick Voltemada, that big tall straw that now stirs the Toon drink, stepped up, delivered. Oh, a smashing penalty. If you haven't watched it, it's beautiful. In the moment, it looked like an arrow shot onto Big Ange's funeral pyre. 3 goals in 3 games for 2-metre Messi. 2-0 Toon. Ange now raw, not winning 7 games. 5 losses, 2 draws. Just 1 point above the relegation zone, which is where he loves to be. It's that his new phrase is, I'll keep you 1 point above the relegation zone in my first season, mate. He's apparently meeting with the board to fight for his job. Is it 27 days into his tenure? Well, when you look at this, how much is this on Big Ange? His tactics, his philosophy, who he is as a human being. How much is it on that big Greek Jerry Jones, Evangelos Marinakis decision to fire Nuno, bringing his stylistic opposite? This is almost, older listeners will remember New Coke. This is like the New Coke of front office self-sabotage decision-making.
I don't think, this will sound a little bit odd, but I don't think you can really blame Postecoglou. He's clearly not the right fit for the team. It is clearly not going to end well. But then he was brought in 3 weeks after the season started, when the squad had already been built and the transfer window was shut, to replace a manager who is his complete opposite. So I suppose you can blame him for taking the job.
Yes.
I guess.
Why was it all the Moussaka and Uzo that they drank together?
I think it's probably the drachmas. It's all about the drachmas. No, look, managers always believe that they will be able to succeed. Everyone involved in professional sports has far more self-belief than me and you could ever imagine, Rog. But they are not normal human beings. They back themselves endlessly. Elite sports people just aren't normal human beings. And Postecoglou will have looked at it and thought, there's loads of talent in that squad. I'm a good manager. I can make this work.
Piece of piss, he said to his wife. Piece of piss.
I don't know if he'd have said it was a piece of piss, but he would have said that it was a piece of something.
Yeah, boiled. My piss is boiling. He will have shouted.
Maybe that means something else in Australia.
I don't know.
My piss is boiling, mate. I don't want to take the job. But no, I think he will believe that he can do it, but from the outside, and it's easy to snipe from the outside, it does look a little bit hubristic, as though, he left Spurs with his reputation kind of intact. Most people thought he was a little bit unlucky to get sacked after winning the Europa League. There's been a lot of unbecoming glee in Ange Postecoglou struggles at Nottingham Forest on this side of the Atlantic, which I think is unfair, because I'm not sure how he could have succeeded. He could have done better. He could have not lost all of his games, but it's not a recipe for success. He's not suited to that squad. He's not suited to that job. At some point, he will not be Forest manager anymore, and that one, I think, will sting more than Spurs.
When you, listeners, do experience boiling piss, don't take the Forest job as a result. Just go and see a doctor. There's other options. There are other options. And post-international break, Chelsea Football Club arrive at what I'm sure will be a quite docile, calm and rational City ground. We'll see if Ange is still there. We'll say his quote that crackled this morning about today. He said, "I love a fight," because I'd always fight the bullies on the schoolyard. Was honestly quite harrowing autobiographically to the layers within layers of this mentality, Raw. It's really tough to watch a really empathetic man in such a grinding position. I take no pleasure in it at all. But let's go to Old Trafford. For one game at least, Manchester United. It was like watching a comedy sitcom in the olden days. Occasionally, they'd do like a serious episode that would come out of nowhere and you'd be like, oh, that hits different. That's what Manchester United 2, Sunderland 0 was. I'm old enough to remember when United were in a doom cycle. Cats with 9 lives were looking at Amorim and thinking, bloody hell, that bloke's got a lot of lives. 50th Premier League game in charge. Just 18 wins to his name before this one. United board said to be swooping in to review his future. This was must-win. And to make it must-winnier, newly promoted, Sunderland arrived. Not your Netflix sad sack cats. This is Regis Labrice's best start to a Premier League life. You have a newly promoted team in 13 long years, Sunderland, swaggering in 6th place. And Amorim made 5 changes to a team that had lost at Brentford last week. In came Belgian goalkeeper Senna Lomens, $29 million deadline day acquisition from Royal Antwerp. Also in the 11 for United, Mason Mount, which meant no room at the inn for $84 million man Mateus Cunha. And long story short, all of it worked. Go home, rubberneckers. Nothing to see here, because after a 4th minute scare in which Sunderland struck a riff from close range, United were comfortably the better side. 8th minute, Mason Mount it was, so spry from the off. Matty Bryan and Bumo cross from the culmination of an 18-pass move. This was United, 18-pass move. According to Opta, the joint most for a goal in the Premier League this season. He went close again a short time later. Incredible shot, no backlift, only an incredible save from Robin Roofs denied. Raw, we talk a lot about fixing Manchester United. Mason Mount, for all of Ruben's new toys, is right there. Could the answer to United's problems be right under his nose? He is a bloody good footballer.
He is, and I saw him at Old Trafford earlier this season, and he was United's best player for the 45 minutes that he played before injury took him off. It was a reminder that I think people have forgotten that Mason Mount plays for Manchester United, but if they can keep him fit and find a role that suits him, he is one of the best midfielders in the country.
31st minute, Diogo Dalot long throw in. Gaggle of Sunderland players attacked the ball but only succeeded to flick it towards a basking shark, Benjamin Sesko, who steered it home for his first goal at Old Trafford. He just scored away at Brentford last week, 2-0 United. So happy for him to find his rhythm in a game that never felt in danger. Ruben even gave a run out to Cunha, who replaced Mason Mount around the hour mark, and Kobbie Mainoo entered from Bumo in the 77th minute too. I will say, quite emotional, thunderous applause from the Old Trafford faithful. United fans almost trying to manifest a young star into Amorim's starting 11. That all added to the polish. Clean sheet for Lawmans. Didn't have a lot to do. I don't think he made a save until the 91st minute, and the Stretford end celebrated any time he touched the ball by singing, "Are you Schmeichel in disguise?" It was such a happy day. Sesko in the goals. 3 Premier League wins in a row at home. Raw, this was one game against a newly promoted side, albeit a good one, that you think Amorim, probably for the first time in a long time, felt, the international break, I'm sad for it. It's going to stop our momentum.
Yeah, it's strange, isn't it, how kind of wildly Man United switch from complete depths of crisis, literally last week, Rog, after they lost to Brentford, to, actually, do you know what? This is looking up because they've beaten Sunderland. And I think that's not massively healthy. But fortunately for Manchester United, they will definitely get at least a point in their next game, Rog, because it is at Anfield. And this version of United, it's the golden rule. When Liverpool are bad, they are good against Manchester United. When Manchester United are bad, they are good against Liverpool.
Oh, Quake, now. I think you're going to win with ease. God bless Ruben Amorim. To your point about whether United are back, he said, there is no momentum with our team. I love his truth-telling. He said, with the break or not, we know what happens when we win one game. The frustration is not to see the same team home and away. ... We got to wait for that Anfield game. I can't wait. In other games, Aston Villa 2, Burnley 1. The battle to be the one true Claret and Blues. And after taking just 3 points from their first 5 games, Aston Villa, fresh off their first league win of the season last weekend against Fulham, faced Burnley, eager to jumpstart a season that looks like, started so well, but just 4 points through 6 games now. Difference here, 26-year-old Dutch striker Donyell Marlon had a pair of quite emphatic finishes either side of half-time. The Times' Tom Olnett described Marlon as not particularly fast, but, quote, hard to stop when he gets going, all arms and elbows. And I'll say, those arms and elbows so bloody important with Ollie Watkins and Morgan Rogers struggling. Emery played Donyell more centrally here, paid off the finishes, utterly phenomenal sizzlers. Burnley failed to get out the relegation zone struggle train, but Unai Emery, 4 straight win all comps, and that stormy start to the season, suddenly in calmer seas over the international break. But across the Midlands, Wolves 1, Brighton 1, winless Wolves, bottom of the table, fresh off their first big point at Spurs last week. But poor Vitor Pereira, flailing the points and the pints, less endearing when it's point singular. 20th minute, tried out some new material, kicked the ball at the officials' dugout in frustration, quickly sent off. Move bit like an NBA coach trying to fire up his team because instinctually, an amazing goal, you got to see it, bounced off the crossbar, then bounced back off the goalkeeper's behind and into his own net just as Pereira drew it. Wolves appear to be heading towards their first win in 11 games, but for second successive week, shattered by a late equaliser, 86th minute, Jan-Paul van Hecker rising up to absolutely headbutt home a header, 1-1. Wolves propping up the table, heading into the international break. I'm old enough to remember they David Blaine their way out of a similar position last season. I think it was 1 point from the first 8 games there, but then reeled off 6 successive wins in the second half of the season under Pereira. But then they had Cunha when he was good. They had Ray and Ait-Nouri, almost as skeleton keys to crack the padlocks. Raw. It's going to be tougher without them, isn't it?
They do have some quality, Rog. There are reasons for hope, like they have enough players in that squad who might come good at the right time to just about get them over the line. Doesn't help that at least 2 of the newly promoted teams look pretty good. That's not great. And this is a rule that applies to everybody except Everton. Generally, if you spend 2 or 3 or 4 years narrowly avoiding relegation, at some point you're getting caught out. And it feels like Wolves might have just taken it one step too far this year.
Oh, who will pay the ferryman? And talking about not Everton, finally, the big one, Everton 2. This happened, Crystal Palace 1. Let history remember, unbeaten Palace, 19 straight games unbeaten, best run in Europe, entered the Big Dick to meet unbeaten at home Everton in the match, which was Jordan Beautiful Pickford's 300th Premier League game in the Bluebelly shirt. It was his steely wrists that kept Everton in it early and often. Yes, the wrists of a young onanist. It was incredible to watch him against Palace, who was so bloody well drilled. What Palace did, they let Mykolenko run at them. They wanted him to have the ball at his feet. They wanted it to be not Grealish, not Ndai. It was like seeing NBA teams let Ben Simmons have the ball around the 3-point arc. Miko would run deep into the Palace half. You could see him psychologically almost being like, why is no one coming out to stop me? But they wanted him to be on the ball because it led to nothing. Palace kept countering. It was remarkable to witness them just hurt us at will. I was terrified. So were the Everton players every time Palace ran us. Poor young Tieno Barry just missed a sitter at one end, bleeding out a pool of his own self-confidence. Palace reacted by romping upfield. Kamada and Ismail Sarr combining, fling the ball down the line like a rugby team to find the open man. In this case, Daniel Munoz, possibly the most potent right back in the Premier League right now, lashed through Pickford. And my God, in that moment, can I just be clear? I wrote in my diary, why never us? Why do Palace have all of the joy? The FA Cup, the Europe, now they're coming to our house, making it, in the words of @SupportBall in our Discord, making us realise we should never have left Goodison for Baddison. I wrote in my game notes, Raw, why is it never us allowed to have fun, Raw?
Well, I mean, that's not how you'll have felt at the end of the afternoon, Rog. But what I would say is that I think Palace there are various lessons like that other teams can learn from Palace, and one of them is represented by Daniel Munoz, which is recruit smart, recruit for your system, recruit players who you think have an extra place to go to, who can kick on, and do it in a joined up, intelligent, smart, unassuming way, and you can build a team like Crystal Palace. So although it has not recently been Everton, I think, with David Moyes, with the new ownership, it is possible that it could be Everton again.
God bless, that is the big picture yearning, the big picture dream. Because in this moment, this was the first time we've been behind even at the Big Dick Energy. Everton, we seemed imbalanced, we seemed slow. All the flaws in the squad build. We have no fullbacks. We lack a really confident striker. Those two flaws combining to suck the energy out of the entire team. It seemed hopeless. There was some boos, let history remember, at half-time. But the second half, so different. Alcaraz entered, so willing, so direct. Beto, just Betoing. And we made more of a fist of it. History should remember again, Mateta missed 2 gilt-edged chances to finish that game and kick the corner flag. Palace were dominant. But then we got a penalty for Lacroix's foul on Timur Abunam. Up step, one beautiful Ilian die. I screamed when he scored. I couldn't help myself. I screamed, let's go and win this. I was watching with my eldest son, Samson, and he just said, Dad, you've just effed us. You've just effed all of us by screaming that. My kids know how it works, but no. Not on this day. Jack Grealish charging up the flank, stiff-arming like Derek Henry, and then 93rd minute, and Dye teased a stunning ball for beautiful Beto. Freddie in our Discord wrote, you say Beto, I say B9. Let that catch on. Headed it down. Dean Henderson parried. Daniel Munoz tried to clear, but then just hit the thunderous thighs and feet of Jack Grealish, and the ball ricocheted in. Everton joy. I don't see this often. Everton wonder. Everton victory. Everton good luck and glory, and it felt so incredibly great. I was just at the final whistle, I was like, God, I love football, Raw. I was dead at half-time, dead, and now I live again. Raw, stay with me theologically here. We all live through St. Jack Grealish. I think the only rational explanation is he's an angel sent from heaven to come and save us.
I mean, all the evidence does point in that direction, Rog, or the ball got kicked against his leg. It's one of the two, isn't it?
Yeah, but two things can be true, you always tell me in football. I genuinely...
You told me that before. That's your line.
Until proven otherwise. I genuinely am watching this. I think we're living a miracle. I think we're watching something deeply profound and miraculous. And the only question is, he is an angel. He has been sent to earth to lift us on his wings. And I mean that sincerely. This is not flip stuff. This is hot takes, people. What exactly is the extent of what he's going to save? That is the question. Is it just Everton? Could he save the world? I don't know. We're going to find out. But for this day, Moyes outclassing Glasner. I mean, just like out-physicaling Palace down here. Palace were, I mean, yes, they were still reacting, and I think this is probably it, to the rigours of midweek European football for the first. I think they were shattered at the end of this one. And so what felt like, for sure, their first win at Everton since 2014 turned into their first defeat in 20 games. I want to applaud that run. I want to applaud Oliver Glasner, who was incredible in defeat. He wasn't moaning, he wasn't like bitter, he said, we will begin again to write a new chapter. We made a few steps forward in the last few months. Now we have to feel this pain and learn from it. Raw, it's wisdom for football and life.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is the thing about Palace at the moment. Everything that happens to them at the moment, they seem to come out of with grace, effectively. And that's not nothing. For Everton, Rog, does that feel like the first big kind of moment in the history of the Big Dick? Is that the kind of first memorable moment, do you think?
I mean, the haters will say you just beat Palace. But yeah, it did. I think it was the biggest moment under the new ownership, the freaking ownership. I'm sure they feel like they have, this probably felt so good for each. And, they've appointed this front office quite carefully and are giving them a mandate. And I think for the fans, we don't come from behind. We only come from behind against Crystal Palace. Everton Football Club, that's like our history. But what they can take from this, when we are so clearly deeply flawed, is going to be fascinating to witness. I love the way you said grace. We've talked about angels. This is turning into a proper religious show, which I love. I do want to read a very quick raven from a GFOP, Michael Beck Gifford, who wrote from Fort Collins, Colorado. Rog, Since the opening of Hill Dickinson Stadium, you've referred to it as the Big Dick. Stealing nicknames has been occurring since the dawn of man, but I wanted you to know the original Big Dick refers to Dick's Sporting Goods Park in Commerce City, Colorado, home of the mighty-ish Colorado Rapids since 2007. Since Everton has been in existence a wee bit longer than the Rapids and has a much bigger fan base, I will graciously and officially choose to relegate our Big Dick name to Little Dick. You're welcome, Michael. As I say, Michael, I want to thank you for your generosity on behalf of all the Colorado. It's big of you. We just got to find the middle-sized dick, Raw, and then we'll get our whole, dick version of the Three Bears in the Dickiverse. But before this goes from, religious to quite profane, let's get to a great question in our mailbag to close the show, which comes from the wondrously named Leonard Goodnight. If you name Lenny Buonanotte, Brighton would buy you for $15 million. Raw, do the honours.
Leonardo Buonanotte might play for Brighton. Anyway, I have a question.
Chelsea coming in for you, Leonard.
Gentlemen, I have a question for you. Well, mostly for Rory, since he's a Yorkshireman. I'm an American, but one with a love of English history and football, of course. I've often read of York's prominent place in English history. Constantine the Great was first proclaimed emperor in the town, then called Eboracum. Then the capital of the Roman province, Britannia Inferior. Just a side note here. One of the big mistakes the Romans made was mistaking the northern bit of Britain for the inferior part. That was the problem. That was why it didn't work out. And I'm not sure I can pronounce this, as Eorfawik, it was the home of King St. Edwin, reckoned a Bretwalda by St. Bede, and was capital of mighty Northumbria. As Jorvik, it was capital of the Vikings' Danelaw. I'm not sure that's how that worked, but anyway. It was the site of the only English archbishopric outside Canterbury. The Duke of York has been a prominent and powerful title for centuries. Asterisk, we don't talk about the current one. It is often called the capital of the North, and has a claim on the title Second City of England. Again, I feel even as a Yorkshireman that this is a stretch, albeit alongside various other cities. Yorkshire has a great footballing history. Sheffield FC and Hallam FC are the two oldest clubs in the world. And the FA's laws of the game were originally written by a man from Hull. Do you know who else is from Hull, Rog? James Horncastle.
Yeah, there's a statue of him. Go on.
Yorkshire has many clubs in the Football League to this day. There are some listed. There's a few of them. But the city of York itself only has York City, which plays all the way down in the 5th-tier National League, in a stadium that seats 8,500 people. It's the sort of club a rich American might buy on a lark. I just need to win the Powerball first. How is it that such an important, storied city doesn't have a club in the Football League? Surely the people of York, Yorkers, deserve better. Thanks, and have a better than average day. Leonard, good night.
Raw, is it Yorkers? Do they call themselves it?
No, it's not. What would you call someone from York? A Yorkist? A Yorkie. Might be a Yorkie. No, it's just, they're just people from York. That's all. That's what it is.
You're all the people
we don't have that thing in England. Like, Yorkshireman is anyone from Yorkshire. We don't have that thing in England where people from every city have to have a name to respond with. Like, Americans would be like, I'm a New Yorker, I'm a Bostonian, whatever, I'm an Angeleno. We just say, I'm from York.
No, you don't. There's Manx, there's Brummies,
yeah, no, but not every
proper
city has it.
Proper cities, but
maybe it's bigger cities. That's a fair point. I think, in answer to Leonard's question, York City were in the Football League for a long time. They have, like a lot of clubs in their kind of situation, fallen into hard times because they're in too small a city to really compete at kind of championship level or Championship League One level. There, from memory, there are a couple of like slightly dodgy ownership things. I think they are or were fan owned for a while. They're established in
I think Constantine the Great, it was his fault. Wasn't he like the Marinakis of the Roman province Britannia Inferior era?
Let's not talk about the Britannia Inferior thing. It makes me really cross. They've fallen on hard times, but they're now established in the National League, which is the 5th division. I think they came pretty close to promotion last year. They're okay, York. The serious answer, Rog, is that that's not far off where York should be just in terms of population. It is like historically massively important city, but it's not a huge place. It's quite a small city, really. Beautiful. You should visit if you get a chance. It's a wonderful place. I once recommended it to Ryan Reynolds.
Did you really?
I did. I interviewed Ryan Reynolds and Rob Mack before he changed his name. And I think they were playing... Wrexham were about to play York. And I said, is it a home or away? Or that was the next game that he was coming over for. And he was like, it's away. We're going to Bootham Crescent, whatever it's called now, the Kit Kat Stadium or something. And I said, you should go to Jorvik. because it's the only museum where you can smell history. And I personally, Rog, think it speaks volumes for Ryan Reynolds that he laughed at that joke.
He probably went. But by the way, I would have sent him to the National Railway Museum.
Oh, that's amazing. The Railway Museum is incredible.
It's like genuinely Americans go. It's just so nostalgic. Also, stop off at the Hockney Museum in Saltaire, which is like an hour away, and also stunning.
Well, if you're coming to Saltaire, you might as well come to where I live, Rog. That's only around the corner, Saltaire.
Bro, we've got to get a heritage plaque on the slap it on the side of the Rory and start selling.
But I would say that the other point that's in Leonard's letter that I think is genuinely true. If you're a rich American, York's probably quite a good shout as a club to buy. In all seriousness, because it has a degree of international recognition. There is stuff to do there. It's a nice place, and there are loads of tourists already. It would make perfect sense if you're buying a small club. York is a really good choice.
Let's start GoFundMe, Men in Blazers. Let's buy York together. Can I just say, in the early days of Men in Blazers, we used to have a regular guest, an amazing man called Barry Hearn. If you don't know who he is, he's like the Don King of English boxing listeners. He owned a third-tier team, Leyton Orient, back then, which is why he came on. He was a remarkable man. He had the idea then, Raw, of Americans buying York City and rebranding it because it would be under new ownership. His idea was we should all rebrand it together with this GoFundMe that we're going to start, Raw. He wanted to rebrand it as New York City. And then he had this whole plan, like, let's change the stadium's name to Manhattan, which sounded better. Right? Like, well, where do New York City play? They play in Manhattan. And just making this tiny team, America's team, like really gaudy strips, really crazy, like Evel Knievel. They could play in like his shirt and all that stuff. I'm like, so years on, I would love to make this happen because York is an amazing, amazing city. I used to go there as a kid. First time I went, Raw, I crap you not, I used to imagine, because it's where Terry's, who make the chocolate oranges, was founded, right? I used to imagine the first time I was disappointed to find out that it didn't have like chocolate orange groves on the very streets there.
I mean, how do you think I felt whenever I went, Rog? It's a living torture for me. It is the home of the chocolate orange. But it's the home of so much more.
Yeah, God bless. Let's make it happen. We're going to start a GoFundMe almost immediately. We will never get round to this, listeners. But if someone does, we're all in. Yorkshire Tourist Board, if you're listening, call us. And Leonard, send us your postal. We'll send you a coveted Men in Blazers patch. Keep sending your letters and questions for Rory and me to meninblazers@gmail.com. They fill us with joy. That's it for today. I'm actually here in New York this week. We've got Tyler Adams coming on. There's talk of Christian Pulisic jumping aboard. We'll be on with Clint Dempsey after the US face Ecuador Friday night live here on YouTube. Come and join us. Also on the Women's Game platform, we've got a new show, a beautiful show, teaming up with Becky Sauerbrunn. Incredible guests. First, Elizabeth Banks. This week, the inimitable Katie Nolan. Episode is linked in the show notes below. Becky, one of the world's most incredible human beings. Go USA. Raw, huge thanks to you, your Crown Prince of Harrogate.
I watched the Elizabeth Banks one. I feel like you're getting better quality of guests than me, Rog, to be honest.
I'm not. Becky Sauerbrunn is.
Yeah, maybe it's just Becky. Yeah.
You and I are both in Britannia Inferior, Raw. This is Rog sending you big, big love. Let's not take a second of watching football together for granted. Encourage.